Yes, perfect. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Moms Mean Business. I am so excited today. I have the amazing Ariana, who is an incredible photographer, and we're going to talk all about her life story, how she got into photography, and her other business and her project. She's in the process of writing a book, which I'm honored to be a little bit a part of. And we're going to talk about all of that and how she juggles motherhood. She has two beautiful children and how she does everything with juggling motherhood at the same time. So welcome, Ariana.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be able to sit down and have this chat with you because it's such an important topic for people, especially that are running businesses and also looking after children, and hopefully they won't feel so alone in the different things that they're trying to navigate as they do both.
Absolutely. It is the support that is needed now, even more than ever. Like the support was desperately needed pre-COVID, whereas now it's even more isolating, like isolation stacked on top of isolation, literally. And then the worry and the anxiety of everything that's going on. So, whatever way we can support each other, it is so crucial. And it's so important to back women and support women anyway, because there's enough of people tearing each other down and trying to get on top and stepping on everybody's fingers and toes in the process. So it's so wonderful to have authentic and genuine support from people who are like-minded, who are going through the same trials and tribulations as you. So Ariana, tell me, I'm so excited to hear your history and what led you to what you're doing.
Well, initially, I guess I've been on quite a journey because I kind of bought into that lie that you couldn't be an artist and also thrive. I bought into that lie that you had to be a starving artist or you had to just be an artist on the side, that it couldn't be your main source of income, or it couldn't I'd be a proper business. And so even though I've had a camera in my hand since I was 4 years old, and I still have that camera, by the way, but
Oh, wow.
at the time, I really felt such a connection to photography, even as a very little girl. And I would take photographs of my pony and my baby dolls, and I used to set up my Barbie dolls, and I would tell stories through setting them up and taking pictures, and I would put books together that way. But I guess, as you kind of leave childhood, you start to be told by the greater society that, those dreams and ambitions are just childlike and you have to leave them behind with childhood. And so I went on a completely different path. I went the traditional route, went through university, got 2 bachelor's degrees, a master's degree, got a higher certificate in real estate as well, on top of all the other things that I was doing. And eventually just made this return back to photography, which I'm so glad that I did. And it really was motherhood that brought it about, because I was working in Irish Property Services for about 6 years or so. And then I had my son, and I decided that I did not want to go back to traditional employment. I loved the bond that I had with him too much to be separated from him. And also, the birth did not go as planned, but breastfeeding did. So I didn't really want anything to come in between that breastfeeding bond. And when I wasn't getting the flexibility with relation to returning to work, I just thought, I'm not going back. Now is my time. And I'd done a little bit of a photography business on the side back in the States for about 5 years, but never really pursued it as a full-fledged business. And this time around, it's been so different because I've put intentionality into every piece of it. It has truly been a creation that has been brought to life. I've been able to feel into my imagination. I've been able to get in connection with the divine part of myself to guide me along the way. It's been so intuitively led. And because of that, it feels so good and so aligned. And every step of the way is just such a pleasure and such a joy. And I've never felt like that in traditional employment. So it's the biggest blessing to be able to do what I love every single day, and to feel so good about it. And so it's made all the difference. But that's a little hint of what it's been like from 4 years old, having the camera in my hand, to now being able to return back to what I loved so much as a child.
That's incredible. That's almost like the hero. Well, it is the hero's journey. And what I love, and I hear time and time again from moms in business, is that it's motherhood that made the change. They didn't want to go back to their previous life because they wanted to be a part of their children's lives, and they worked around it. And I think women are so inspirational how they can adapt and take on so many roles and do this and do it successfully. It's so different to the old style cutthroat business that was out there years ago. Everything I find is coming much more into the authentic route, which is wonderful. And I think people are becoming more successful, not being cutthroat. When they're being more authentic, things are working just so much better. And what they're doing is helping others so much and inspiring others. It's just wonderful to see it. And I hear it time and time again, how motherhood has brought about that change. And it's just so incredibly inspiring. It's
Yeah.
almost like life was waiting for you to blossom when you became a mom.
It's so true. And actually what you said there was so true to my own story, in the fact that I had really felt into the masculine energy side of myself before becoming a mother. So I was living life in a very masculine dominated way, as in, you know, it was very forceful, it was very rigid. I had a lot of male friends, which I loved, but I did not tap into my female creative side really and truly until I became a mother. I did not understand my power as a woman. I did not connect with other females as well as I did until I became pregnant and then birthed my child and became a mother and went through that journey. And so now I get to engage both energies. I get to create things from a softer, more feminine side, but I also have that strength from the masculine side. Like, they really work well together now. I'm engaging both, and it's so much better than trying to operate from one or the other.
Definitely, that it's harmonious. Oh, that's absolutely incredible. And it's so lovely to hear that as well, like being aware of the two sides, the masculine and the feminine energy, and blending them is just brilliant. And what's so fantastic as well is like you can dip into either when you need, like, say if you're facing some kind of issue, you can step more into the masculine energy when, if and when you need to address it. And likewise, when you don't need that and you need the softer, more feminine energy, you can step into that. So you can actually choose which one. And yeah, it's a blessing, an absolute blessing. So when you became a mom, what was the deciding, do you know the deciding moment that you decided you weren't going back to work, or was it a very gradual process for you?
If I'm honest, if I'm completely honest, I really feel it started as early as pregnancy, because I knew when I became pregnant, it took me quite a while to conceive. And so when I finally did have life growing within me, I didn't want to do anything else except for focus on the fact that finally this enormous, amazing, incredible thing had happened. And so I'd be so focused on it, and I'd be so happy, and I'd be so full of joy. And then I was working in Irish Property Services, as I said, you know, I'd pick up the phone and someone would have an issue, and it was completely throwing me in the opposite direction. And so I really felt it as early as in pregnancy. And I just remember thinking to myself, I had my scan photo on the desk, and I just remember thinking, I just want to sit and focus on this beautiful little being. I do not want to have to be fielding everybody's issues and trying to sort everything out. I just want to focus on this amazing thing that so many other people around me don't even have a clue has happened, you know?
Yeah.
And but it really, I didn't take the brave step, I will call it, and cut ties until after I'd had him and I was just due to go back. I tried for months and months and months to be able to negotiate some kind of flexible terms, and I was just getting met with no's. But I know now that I was being met with no's because it wasn't meant for me. And I think if I was truly honest with myself at the time, I knew that too. I was just too afraid to say, I'm not coming back, because I didn't want to let them down. I didn't want to, I suppose, be judged for the fact that I wanted to be a mother and to feel into that space of motherhood and maybe not have this career and try to juggle everything all at once, which I know is funny because I still created a business anyway. But it's a different thing. Like I can take business building at my own pace, whereas when you are an employee, you're expected to play by their rules regardless of what's going on in your life. And there isn't a lot of space. Maybe now it's changing with the pandemic, but at that point in time, there wasn't a lot of space for flexibility. There wasn't a lot of space for saying, yes, we'll let you work flexible hours, or yes, we'll let you work some days at home. It just wasn't going to happen. And so I made the decision that whatever I was going to do from a career aspect was going to be taking away from my son. And I had to make a really fine-tuned decision about how much I was willing to give in that regard. And ultimately, I just wasn't willing to give away 50, 60 hours of myself to someone else. Yeah. So I set up my business and I was able to grow it at a sustainable rate. I remember reading in a book called Chillpreneur by Denise Duffield Thomas. She was talking about the opposite of the hustle and grind. She was talking about having your business be built around your life and doing it again with that more feminine energy. And I think I was able to build it at my pace. So what she says in the book is that, you have a 1% conversion rate, but your audience will grow. But actually that's a blessing, because even though it maintains this 1% conversion rate, as you are growing, that 1% is also growing too. And I thought that is the biggest blessing of the universe, that whenever you're growing a business, you're able to grow it at a sustainable rate that suits your life. So that's been huge for me.
Yeah, that's a massive thing, because otherwise you're facing massive overwhelm. And when people are overwhelmed, they tend to stop. They can't continue, and then everything is frozen and stuck. So that's such a blessing. And it's really such a natural progression as well with that 1%. Absolutely. What would you have found were your biggest obstacles with setting up the business and being a mother? And what kind of innovative solutions did you come up with to solve them?
Oh, Valerie.
So many.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was that guilt of I'm wanting to pour myself into something that I know is meant for me, that I know is meant to be built, that I know is meant to be part of my legacy, but my son and my children are part of my legacy too. And how do I make sure that I maintain a balance such that my son isn't feeling ignored, but my business isn't either? So I'd say that was probably really the biggest challenge. Any other admin tasks or website building, you can Google and find an answer to that, or you can find an expert who can help you. But in this space, I really just had to keep fine-tuning over and over again. There'd be some days where I was really off kilter and really out of balance, and then I'd have to draw it back in and make up for it on other days. And that's actually how Indulge and Delight in Yourself Thursday was born. So if you've ever seen posts come up on Thursdays, that was my day to go to swim lessons with my son, to pour into him, to make sure that I had that day dedicated to just being with him, and also giving some time to myself. Because at the very start of building the business, you don't have boundaries set in place until you put them into place. So unlike working for an employer where you do have, office hours, typically, I didn't have office hours. So I could literally be working on my business at 3:00 in the morning if I wanted to.
Yeah.
So the setting up of the boundaries came later, but I really had to pour into myself in that regard. I had to be kind and gentle as I was working my way through it. And I also needed to seek help in the form of letting my in-laws watch my son sometimes and have that time with him, and to understand that it's okay for someone else to be an influence in his life. It's okay to have help through the form of childcare. And actually, that's probably better for him than being ignored or being parented by a device, which still happens from time to time. I'll be completely honest. But
we all do it.
Yeah. but that was the thing that I had to learn. And now I have 2 children. And so luckily I have better boundaries, I have better balance, and I have better help around me. But it took time to get there. It's taken 3 years for me to get to where I am now.
Yeah, it is a continual process. And even as you move forward, you'll be like recognizing more things. But yeah, having that mom guilt is just, it's across the board, it's universal. And no matter what we do, there is no like one answer fits all. It's so individual to each person, to each parent. And it's huge. It's one of the biggest issues that I see all the time. But I think it's just having the patience and, like what you said, having the boundaries and the understanding. And it's great for them to like your son could go to the in-laws, so he's getting to experience them as well. So that's another blessing, even though you'll still obviously feel the mom guilt because we try and do it all.
Yes. And
How was, sorry, yeah?
I was just going to add too that I think, with the mom guilt, I also had to learn to lean into self-love and self-worth a lot more too, because the two biggest things that I found that has grown me spiritually is having a business and having children. And so when you have both together, you will grow tremendously because you have to if you want to keep going. You will find triggers along the way about, am I worthy of this? Am I worthy of receiving, whether it's being paid for the beautiful artwork that I do, or, am I worthy of even taking this time away from my family to build a business? It all is in there, and it all comes out along the journey.
Yeah, it comes out in the wash, doesn't it? How did you find the transition from being a parent of one child to two?
Honestly, I found it easier. I
Really?
think, yes. And I think that part of it is because I was able to have that growth between having my son and building the business and then bring my daughter into the world. I was able to grow. I was able to get into such a better headspace mentally, energetically. I was so much more improved. And that was from the growth that happened with having my business. It was from doing the self-love and self-worth meditations and affirmations. It was from investing in myself through coaching and mentoring. And it was all of that brought me to a more positive space, so that when I welcomed my daughter in, everything just flowed still. I never felt better than I did in my pregnancy with her. I was booking sessions the day after I got home from the hospital. I was back to
Wow.
doing sessions physically 8 weeks after having her, even though I had a section. It was just unreal. But I think also it helped because my son knew that I couldn't be his everything anymore, that he had to share me. And it was almost like this unspoken understanding that he wouldn't come to me for all of his entertainment. And that helped a lot. So it helps that they have each other. And now my daughter's 13 months old, so they can play together. And even if I do need to get a bit of work done, sometimes they're piled around me on this chair and we're all sitting in the chair together while I'm working. But sometimes they're playing with each other. And it has just been the most incredible transition. And so if there are moms that are watching this who are maybe expecting another baby, don't think that you have to go completely back to square one, because that's not necessarily the case. You've grown, your child has grown, you're in a different space than you were previously. And so you can keep progressing. You don't have to go backwards. You might have those moments where you feel that you are regressing, but know that they're only momentary and that you can lean into all the learnings and all the growth that has already taken place.
That is so reassuring to so many moms, I'm sure, because it is such a huge step going from one child to two. Now, I personally have like a 20-year age gap between my two, so I didn't struggle with that so much. Although my daughter, my older daughter, did still struggle with the fact that there was a sibling coming, but on a very different level to what you're talking about and what an awful lot of people are going through when there's only a couple of years between the kids. It is, and I'm sure it's very frightening for an awful lot of moms. I don't have that personal experience myself to reflect on, but yeah, they'll be very reassured. You make it sound so comforting.
To me, it has been. There are all these people that I'm very careful about who I let into my environment and the things that seep in these days. So I'm so much more aware of it. But there are those people that are like, oh, best of luck with that. And I would just come back with this positive reassurance that I knew everything would be okay.
Yeah.
And so when I was soothing someone else, I was actually soothing myself and saying those things. So I really did the pre-paving, as Abraham would say, for it to be easy. I chose ease consciously and I chose joy consciously. And there are certainly days where I do not feel that ease and joy, and I have to
We're all human.
I have to realign and reconnect with it. But it is a conscious choosing every day. And so therefore that is more of what I get in my life. Whereas before, when I wasn't aware of that, it was more chaotic and I was more just whatever the day brought me because I wasn't actively choosing. But now it's different and life feels so good.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing, like the shift in mindset and how it affects everything in your life? It's absolutely incredible.
So true.
And it's perfect to have those bad days too, where things are all off kilter, because it's all learning. And I think those bad days, they help us to be more understanding towards ourselves, to be more gentle towards ourselves, because we are so harsh and expect so much of ourselves. So I think there's huge learning in those bad days too, because we learn to forgive ourselves, and it's so important.
Absolutely. And I think it's great for our children to see too, to see an honesty and a vulnerability as we're going through this journey, and to be able to share that with them and to be able to show them how to make amends or how to repair a relationship if you have a struggle. There are times that I struggle with my oldest child because my expectations of him are so much higher than probably what they should be. So it's not just having big expectations of myself. It's the fact that, he's verbal and he can understand things. And I think he's understanding things at a much higher level than maybe he actually is.
Yeah.
And so I have to reframe my expectations, and I have to be honest with him and apologize and connect with him. And again, I was having the conversation with my husband the other day that I feel like on the outside, people just think that we're parenting and that we're growing businesses. But what we're actually doing is going on the biggest spiritual journey and spiritual growth of our lives, because both trigger us. And the triggers are blessings because they show us where we need to grow. If we didn't have triggers, if we didn't have those tough moments, we would be completely blind to where we could be improved individuals and happier individuals. So as much as it's tough at the time when it's in that moment, we can all take a breath and a sigh of relief that actually it's moving us to a better place. And so it may feel like a struggle at the moment, but we can take it, we can learn from it, and we can do amazing things out of it.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, I agree with you 101,000,000%. It's so beautiful listening to you. I want to ask you next, you are writing an incredible book.
Yes.
Please elaborate and tell everybody all about this.
Well, I was giving my daughter a feed in the middle of the night back in December 2019, and I just had this. A lot of my business is very intuitive. It's very much driven by whatever visions come to me, whatever inspirations come to me. And in the middle of the night, I just heard this voice that said, "It's time." And I knew what that meant, because when I initially started my business, I wanted to be a breastfeeding photographer. I wanted to be the photographer that could give parents an opportunity to remember those beautiful breastfeeding moments, and maybe the not so beautiful breastfeeding moments, and maybe some of the struggles that they overcame, but give them a way to visually look back on that, and also give them a way to reflect back to them that they are doing a much better job than maybe they feel like they're doing at times. But my worry was that whenever my own breastfeeding relationship with my son came to an end, I would be crushed, and it would be very difficult to continue photographing people at that breastfeeding time in their life. And I also was worried, what if people think I'm strange? What if they think it's too much for me to really focus on that aspect of family life? Mm-hmm. And so I made it more broad, and I'm very happy I did. I've met gorgeous, amazing, wonderful families. But when I heard that voice that said, "It's time," I knew that it meant it's time to really own and reclaim what you wanted to do in the first place, what you really set out to do. And so this is my gift to the world. This is part of the legacy that I'm leaving. And this is how I'm helping society remember this art that is breastfeeding, and this beautiful thing that needs to be seen visually to be better understood. We have how-to manuals for breastfeeding. We have books that talk about breastfeeding issues, whether it's thrush or plug ducts or mastitis, but we don't always have the visuals to go with it. And particularly in Ireland, there's a a lot of lack of visuals around it. We don't always see it out in public at cafes. At the moment, a lot of people aren't going out at all, so they're really not seeing it. And I think it's one of those things that needs to be appreciated visually for us to be able to wrap our brains around. Humans are such visual human beings, or such visual beings, creatures. We understand signs before we ever understand words. You know, children can recognize road signs and things like that before they can ever read a book. And so it's very important. It's crucial for us to be able to see things that we're trying to master, that we're trying to understand. So what I wanted to do with this book is to have this collection of stories, have this collection of wisdom and knowledge from the people that are actually breastfeeding, that are actually doing this incredible thing, not just the medical experts that we think are the experts, that often aren't.
Yes.
And not just from one person who had an interest in writing about breastfeeding, but rather a collective body of work from all these incredible women across the country to share their stories, to share the things that they've experienced, and to also capture that they were human beings, they were people before they ever made the decision to breastfeed. So it's capturing them and their entrance to motherhood, it's capturing what they experienced through breastfeeding, and it's also pairing the written word of that with the visuals so that people can see breastfeeding and they can, if they've never seen it before, it can be a little bit demystified. It can be less scary, less daunting. And even though, again, the stories, there will be trials and things in there that people have had to overcome, but the fact that someone overcame it is evidence enough that someone else can give it a try and see how they get on with it. And you just never know what someone's going to connect with from someone else's story. And stories are such beautiful gifts to the world. They are, it's hard for me to even put into words how meaningful it is, but they're such gifts full of treasures for other people. And it's such a gentle way of learning, passing down ways to learn, rather than saying, this is what you should do, this is what you have to do, this is what is mandated, this is what is recommended. It's literally woman to woman to woman to woman to woman, this massive village that is supporting these future generations as they go through breastfeeding. And it's also to serve as a historical document of where we are with breastfeeding at the moment in Ireland. And hopefully we so from now to see how far we've come and to see the positive changes that have been brought about from people being willing to share their stories, people being willing to be seen breastfeeding. And I hope it will offer the children featured in the book an opportunity to see what was important to their mothers and their families, and to feel more at ease about making the decision. Not that there's pressure there to make that decision, but just that it's an opportunity that's open to them.
Yeah, that is just so inspiring. It's incredible. And it is so incredibly powerful as well. And I love that it's opening up so much more and acclimatizing people to all the different types of breastfeeding. And there's a million different ways to breastfeed. It's absolutely incredible. So just because one person had a disaster or a bad experience, it can translate. Somebody else could have almost an identical experience, but it be completely different at the same time. So it's just such, it's not linear. It really isn't a linear journey for anybody. And it's up and down and around and backwards and forwards and every which way possible. But one thing that I always remember is that for any breastfeeding problem, there is a breastfeeding solution. It doesn't mean that you have to stop. And if you do stop, that is fine too. It's your decision, whatever somebody wants. But there are solutions out there. And I think people having access to this resource, this beautiful book that you're making, and can read so many different ways and all the different trials and tribulations through it and how they've overcome them or not overcome them, as the case may be. It's just such a treasure. And just to put it out there more, because I know before COVID, I'm in Limerick, and Limerick became a breastfeeding friendly city, which was wonderful. And it was great to see the stickers going up on cafe doors. But it was also, why do we have to do this? It's the most natural thing in the world. We should just be able to whenever, wherever. It is completely legal. It's our legal right to breastfeed. So it was a double-edged sword, I think, putting the stickers up, because it did bring awareness. It was great. But the fact that that awareness had to be brought to people's attention, that was a bit hard. For myself, with my journey, like I called it a failed attempt with my daughter. I was very young having her, and we lasted 5.5 weeks. But now I have a 3, he just turned 3 last week, and I'm still breastfeeding. So I've had both ends of the scale with it. And I just love learning about other people's experiences, because it's so comforting that whatever you're going through, you know, somebody else is going through it or has gone through it. You're not alone with it. But one thing is, you do have to go out and find the help. It's not going to come knocking on your door, and it's not going to land on your lap. And as you said about like medical experts, I have been told total wrong information by general practitioners. And it took everything to keep my calm. But people are being misled. So to have this resource where people can see all the different aspects of it, I'm so excited. When is the book going to be ready?
Well, I had hoped initially that it was going to be coming out this August, but with COVID and everything that happened, that's just pushed it out. So it will be next year. Yeah. But in all honesty, I think it was a huge blessing, because it meant that I was able to, instead of trying to do the interviews and the photographing at the same time, it meant that I was able to sit down with everyone. I did 83 hours worth of interviews during lockdown.
Wow. And since then, you were busy during lockdown.
Yes. But it was excellent because my husband was home from his job. It was not a job he could do from home. So he was able to be with the children and take over that side of things while I was doing these interviews.
Chance to bond as well when he's normally away at work.
Yes. And in fact, you know, I'm a huge advocate of breastfeeding, obviously, but if I had one other cause, it would be that I would love to see partners be able to get the same amount of leave as individuals that get maternity leave. So whether that's the same sex partner, whether it's, you know, opposite sex, it doesn't matter to me, as long as it's a partner of the person who has birthed the baby. Mm-hmm. I feel like they should have an equal opportunity to be home together, and maybe they won't avail of it, maybe they will, but I think it'd be great for it to be there, because each partner is just as important to that child, I think.
Absolutely.
And when we are feeding, we need someone to feed us, so we need someone to help. So it would help in that regard as well.
Oh, that's absolutely incredible. And what a noble and just incredible legacy to be creating. Well done. My hat is off to you. I've admired you now for so long, and I've been so honored to be a part of it. And I think that COVID, it has had many little blessings to different people. I know it's a terrible thing. I'm never going to say it's a good thing, but it has had, within every seed of adversity, there's always something good to come out of it. And that little blessing, like we did our interview online beforehand, and it was something that I really enjoyed doing, and broke up COVID lockdown for me as well. And then having the photography session at a separate time, because I think it would have been very exhausting to do the entire thing together anyway. So I think that really worked in your favor.
Yeah, and I think it gave us a bit of comfort as well, because we knew each other before I was in your home photographing you.
Yes.
And it gave us an opportunity to chat and to get comfortable with one another. And it wasn't just me walking through the door with the camera. You know, it was like I already knew you when I walked in, and it was fantastic. And you were so amazing. We loved the cookies. They were so delightful. I had to take pictures of the cookies too. So you might see a picture of your cookies in the book. Who knows? But they were amazing. And so thank you so much to you for your kindness. And that is one thing that I wanted to say about this book, and about, you know, earlier when I was talking about not understanding the power of us as females, not connecting with other females as strongly until I became a mother. This book has provided the opportunity for me to connect with so many incredible women throughout the whole country. I'm so inspired by each one of you. And you're all people that I am honored to know. You know, there's not a single person being featured in the book that I wouldn't want to also be friends with, or spend time with, or sit down and have a cup of tea with in a chat. And if anything, it's almost like harder to limit the time, whether it's during the photo session or the interview, to say, okay, we've got an hour and a half, or we've got, whatever the amount of time, because I could sit and chat for hours. And it's such an honor to do so. It's such an amazing thing to be able to open up that space for you to share your story with me. I feel so honored. So it's not even the rest of the world, like they're all getting to benefit too. But for me, it's been such a gift to be able to sit down and to connect with all these incredible women. And it's an honor to know you, to get to know you. And I'm so privileged to be able to share your stories. So thank you.
Well, I can only speak from my own experience, but I feel the exact same as I'm sure all the others did. You had quite an amount as well. Was it 60?
60, yes. So
wow.
I put out the call like one weekend. I kind of put it out there into the world that I was wanting to do this book and I needed to find participants. And within like a 24 to 48 hour period, there were over 120 people that had submitted their interest.
Wow.
And so the publisher said, you need to pick about 60. That would be a good number. So I had to narrow it down. But what I wanted to do was to provide different perspectives. So it's not just about the people themselves and what they've experienced with breastfeeding, but it's, capturing mothers that maybe had children later on in life, or maybe mothers that had children in their teenage years that chose to breastfeed, or maybe they didn't choose to breastfeed then, but they chose to breastfeed later. I've captured women who spoke about abusive relationships and breastfeeding throughout that. I've spoken to women who talked about experiencing sexual violence and then going through their birth experience and breastfeeding. I've spoken to women about working in male-dominated fields where they're pumping in gritty, dirty, grungy, grimy places. There's such a richness to the variability across all the stories, and there are women of color that are being included, and they talk about what that's been like for them. And it's just, there's so much there. But like you said, there are 100 million ways that you can be someone who is breastfeeding. So it's really taking away this concept, this idea that you have to fill some sort of stereotype to be a breastfeeding individual, when that's just not the case. Yeah. You can be that career woman who breastfeeds. You can be the stay-at-home mother who breastfeeds. You can be, like for my own aunt, which was one thing I didn't talk about. She was featured in a book about Western ranching women. That's actually my aunt there. And so I grew up with the hardback version of this book in my parents' home, and there is a snap of her breastfeeding my cousin Sarah. And so I grew up seeing this photograph, but it showed me a very empowering view of breastfeeding. I didn't see it at all as this, you're just going to be stuck under your child and you're never going to have a life again, which is often what people are told. Yeah. Now, I will say with my son, I did not mind being stuck under him. I needed to heal. I needed to have that time to nap and to cuddle and to be close. But I just grew up with that photograph of my aunt, which said to me, you can be a powerful woman. You can stand in your own power and breastfeed as well. So I'm so thankful to have that photograph. And that is part of the inspiration of what I want to put out in the world too, to show that whoever you are, you can give this a try. And if it doesn't work out for you, that's okay. But know that you still have this collective group of individuals who are standing behind you, who are supporting you, who want the best for you, and who have been there before you. I think we always find strength and we always find comfort in people who've gone before us in anything, whether it's speaking to a couple who's been married 30 years before you decide to take the plunge to get married, or if it's speaking to people who've had children before you decide to conceive, or if you're having trouble conceiving, speaking to someone who's gone through IVF. It's always those people who've gone before you that you turn to for that comfort and that guidance and the reassurance and the wisdom and knowledge. So it's my hope that this book will serve as that for all the future people that are finding their way towards motherhood or through breastfeeding, but equally for maybe family members of them who have had no exposure to breastfeeding. They don't know what it's like. They don't know what to expect. And so I hope it will be a companion that anyone can pick up and read and identify with at least some of the people or some of the stories within it.
Wow. What an amazing background, and to have that growing up, because I came from a family where there was no experience around breastfeeding whatsoever. So to have that empowering view of it. But as a teenager, like, when you'd have your girly chats with your pals in school and things, And one of the things I always knew was that I wanted to breastfeed. If I had children, I wanted to breastfeed. And I was gutted that it only lasted 5.5 weeks with my daughter, but there was very little information back then. And I have to forgive myself and allow for that. Whereas there was so much more information now and support that was unreal. And having the online platform, like I used YouTube to learn to feed my son lying down in the bed. For 6 months, I sat up every night, throughout the night, however many times, to feed my child. And it was YouTube taught me how I could do it lying down without it being agony. And thank goodness, because I'm still breastfeeding 3 years later. Can you imagine if I had to sit up there still every time? But one of the things that I think is not shown about breastfeeding, because everyone promotes the antibodies, building the immune system, how good it is, the nourishment, but nobody really tells people what an amazing parenting tool it is. Like, I know I'm coming close to the end of my breastfeeding journey, and I don't know how to parent without it. When he falls down and gets hurt, it's an analgesic. It takes away the pain. It's a bargaining tool at times. And it's such a flexible parenting tool. And I think that needs to get out there so much, and it does make parenting easier. There are sacrifices, there's for and against, as in people talk about the exhaustion, but like, you don't have to get up and make a bottle during the night, so there's so many different ways of looking at it. But yeah, it's been my number one parenting tool, most definitely. It's incredible. Can I ask you, if you could give some advice to mothers that are starting out on their journey and trying to juggle setting up a business or continuing their business and with motherhood at the same time, what would you find what would be the saving grace?
Well, I was thinking about this recently, actually. I purchased a book called Own Your Glow by, I think her name is Latham Thomas, and she talks about desire starting as the size of a seed. And I thought about that, and I thought about, whatever human you love, whatever beautiful thing out in the world, whether it's a big oak tree or, a gorgeous flower, everything started at seed level. Mm-hmm. So if something is seeming too daunting, too overwhelming, too big, if you think you're never going to get there, just remember that all it takes to get started is just that seed of desire. You just need to know it's there. You just need to feel it within you. And I'd also posted something in the Moms Mean Business group as well. And that is, whatever is desired by you is for you. So if you have a vision of it, you have a vision of it because it's meant for you. It doesn't matter if no one else around you can see it. It's not their vision. It wasn't sent to them. So if you have this vision, if you have this feeling, this desire, this part within you that you know this is meant for you, follow it. Even if it's the tiniest steps to get there, every step counts. Every second that you put towards bettering yourself, investing in yourself, believing in yourself, doing the work, it all pays off. And then chances are you'll look back a few years from now and you will have grown tremendously. You will come so far. You have built so many things, and you will have wondered how it all happened. But it just happened step by step by step. And remembering that belief in yourself, remembering that vision's for you, and it only starts with just the smallest seed of desire to have something huge grow from it. And there are also people who maybe they don't want something huge. Maybe they don't want to leave this big empire behind whenever they've passed and they've gone on. But whatever is right for you, feel okay in pursuing that. Give yourself enough space, enough credit, enough honor, enough respect, enough love to know that you're important enough to pursue this dream. And I would just send everyone the biggest heart full of love and joy who's on that journey, because I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like when you're worried that things are just too big, or there's too much to figure out, or what do I do first? Mm-hmm. But there's always help around you, whether it's in the form of, like you said, Googling something or YouTubing something, or reaching out to someone within a Facebook group. There's always a resource. There's always a way. Just keep going. Just keep taking those little steps.
Oh, I love that so much. And it is so true. And we've access to the world now. So just, yeah, small step by small step, scale it back. If the big picture is too big and too daunting, scale it back. Just see what you can do now. You know, we've all been there. We've all been terrified and thought something is too big or that we couldn't do it. But as you said, when you have the desire inside you, you have the ability. You wouldn't have that desire inside you if you didn't have the ability to bring it forward and into reality. And yeah, it's scary, but it's worth it.
Exactly. And that's what I love about you actually covering Napoleon Hill's book, because I think for anyone who is worried about their finances or their state of abundance or their financial prosperity or anything along those lines, and they think, well, I love to invest in a money coach, but I don't have the money for the money coach. It's like that book just, it scales it back and it helps you remember that you already have everything within you that you need. It literally can be something like changing your mindset or telling a different story or assessing your beliefs and changing the ones that don't serve you. But those are all things that you can do. And it takes a bit of effort and it takes a bit of practice, but it's doable. And the investment is from within. And the payoffs are within as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's absolutely incredible. Sure, as they say, like business is 80% mindset and 20% work.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, fantastic. If anyone watching here wants to get in touch with you and wants to maybe book a photo shoot or just even find out more about you and what you're doing while they're making up their mind, how can they contact you?
Yes, so they can get in touch. Info@wellfedphotography.com is the email address. You can also visit our website, which is wellfedphotography.com, or we are on Facebook and Instagram as well at just Wellfed Photography. So I would love to connect with anyone. And it doesn't even have to be for a photo session. Like if there are people watching this that feel a connection and they want to reach out or they have a question that has been sparked from the interview, feel free to reach out for that as well. That's completely fine. I would love to support other people along their journeys. And in fact, it gives me such a boost to be able to share with people what I've learned along the way, because I was back at the start a few years ago and I've gone through that journey. And so it's just, it fills me with joy to share it and to help someone else along the way with theirs.
I love it. It's a win-win, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Oh, thank you so much for coming on today and giving me your time and giving the other parents your time and your wisdom. And I am so excited about the book. Be sure, guys, and follow along on social media and keep a check-in so as you can get your hands on a copy of the book. I can't wait to hold it in my hands. I'm so excited. It is brilliant. Thank you so much. Do you have any final little thing you want to say before we head off?
I just wanted to thank you so much. Thank you for what you're doing to support other women and to have that beautiful community, because it is invaluable. You know, being able to just log on, whether it's from your phone, wherever you are, or from your computer, to just have those moments to connect with other people that are building their businesses, that are going through motherhood. And I just thank you so much for inviting me to share what I've learned, because it truly is, it's one of our spiritual needs, as Tony Robbins says, to be able to share. And so for me to be able to come on and share this time with you and to share what I've learned is a huge blessing to me. So thank you so much. I wish everyone the best along their own journeys. And I'm so looking forward to getting this book out in the world. So thank you for being a part of that too.
Oh, thank you so much. That means the world to me. And likewise, I get so much from everybody as well that's part of the group. So it's a win-win. It's selfish reasons as well as generous reasons. I love the win-wins.
Yes, always.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And I hope you've all enjoyed this. And you know how you can get in touch with Ariana, wellfedphotography.com. Thank you, Ariana. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.